Frame one, I will say this really only applies to online gaming, specifically ranked gameplays and or very highly competitive games when I speak about this. It just looks better in the title for me to say this thing ruined gaming, okay? Now that we're past that, the thing that I think ruined gaming is meta, right? So what do I mean by that? It's just, you could really substitute the word meta by just saying the most popular thing that's going on right now. It might be the most optimal way, but the most optimal way to do something isn't always the most enjoying. This is gonna be a short video. It shouldn't be too long, hopefully not longer than like 10 minutes or so. But what I mean is that it really feels like ever since around 2013, maybe 2014, where the internet era started to really explode and boom, we started getting a buttload of YouTube videos and or content creators or Twitch creators, whatever it is that you wanna say. We just had this massive information overload on what's the best thing to do for this scenario. This is the best option that you have for this game. This is the best option that you have for this character. These are the most broken characters. These are the things of how you exploit your game and basically just not have fun. I don't understand the mentality of somebody that only plays a certain character just because it's a way to win. Like, what happened to the days where we would just be playing a video game and then we figure stuff out on our own? Now, I understand that the internet has been very informative and has been helpful. Those same types of guides and those same types of breakdowns of characters are very useful for single player experiences or things where you're just focused on you in a game, like PvE stuff, right? But when you start getting into PvP, it starts creating a very gray scale. So what I mean by that is you'll start to log on to your favorite PvP game, whether that's something like, I'm from the anime community, so I'm gonna say something like Naruto Storm Connections or Storm 4 or whatever, right? It could be Street Fighter, it could be Tekken, and you start realizing that you're running into certain characters more than you're running into other characters, and then you're gonna realize that you're running into like the same characters like 95% of the time, and you're realizing that you're not really having fun because you're just playing against somebody else that's not even really thinking for themselves. Why did you buy the video game if you're not going to sit there and actually try to get good with a character you actually feel like being talented with? I just don't understand the mentality of somebody that puts on a video game or does anything in life just for the sake of just wanting to win. Where's your enjoyment in it? I feel like you people are always sucking the soul out of video games. It's not that the internet ruined gaming. It's not that these communities ruined gaming. It's the fact that when you are shaping a game for competitive play, you end up creating an ecosystem. As I'm editing this video, I did realize that I forgot to say that within that ecosystem of having a competitive game also adds to the experience of this meta type of conflict that I'm having, is that the game typically only produces a meta due to the lack of true balancing within all characters of a game or all weapons of a game. It's really difficult to just have a perfectly made game, right? It doesn't happen, but it was less prevalent that you would come across these issues before the massive wave of the internet era, where everything is so accessible. You had all this information that's just dumped into you, and you can just look up what's the best weapon to use, what's the best character to use, versus finding and figuring that out that matches your playstyle and really just learning how to play with that character or that weapon the way that you see fit, so you can have fun with that. And now people are just taking that out of their entire head, and they're just like, you know what, this is obviously the best thing to do, so I'm gonna have fun by doing this thing that somebody made the decision for me before I actually truly gave it a chance. I know tons of games where you would play with a certain weapon or you play with a certain character that is frowned upon in the mass community because it's not a part of the meta, or it's more difficult to play with them, but you seem to be looking like a god because you know how to play with that character or that weapon because it's playable. The game devs made them into the video game for a reason. They put them there because it's supposed to be used, but then you end up having 90% of your assets not being used because so many people are only focusing on this small niche community of characters, and they're saying like, this is how it has to be played, or these weapons is how it has to be played. And so that's all you run into. That is what my frustration is. I hope that you understand that, and if you don't, I don't care. Click off the video. It's not like I was getting a whole bunch of support anyways, where people are always striving to get one up on the next person. And I get that, that's fine. I'm a competitive person as myself, but you run into these issues no matter what competitive game you go into, where people are always speaking about, oh, they're spamming grabs, they're spamming this thing, they're spamming. I've said it a few times myself. I'm always going to be victim, and I'm always going to use myself as an example. But the thing that we can all universally agree on is that prior to like 2013, 2014, possibly like 2012 or something, we didn't really have this huge mass of information that was saying this is the best weapon that you need to use, this is the best character to use, this is exactly how you break down like every other character. And I'm not saying that that's the sole reason, but it does add into the entire picture of like having a meta, right? So for anybody that doesn't necessarily know what a meta is something where the mass majority of people will agree that this subset of how to play the game is the most optimal way to play the game every time. So you're gonna have the majority doing that thing, while the minority might be casuals, or they're just getting into the ranked scene, or in general, they just sit there and they play ranked, or they're competitive by nature for enjoyment, and they're not just caring about every single win and the most optimal way to get the win. What they're focused on is the most optimal way to have a good experience with the characters or the positions or the weapons that they love, and how to use those the most optimal way. Not the easiest way to get a win, not the easiest way to get up in life, not the easiest way. So it just feels like I may get hate for this, and I really don't give a shit, but I'm one of the type of people that is competitive by nature. I'm competitive because I grew up playing games like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, King of Fighters, Bloody Roar, and a lot of people don't even know about Bloody Roar, but I grew up on these types of fighters. So anytime there's a competitive game, I always lean in on the fighting game side. So I'm speaking more so from the perspective of that. But when you start looking into the perspective of maybe a shooter, it's the same deal, right? You have a meta where the game dev might update something, so the balancing changes really impact the entire community to the point where you have a huge list of videos that come out, and all of a sudden nobody's thinking for themselves, and they're like, well, I'm gonna use this weapon because this is the best weapon to use, and it's gonna gun down my enemies the quickest. And I get on one end, you're gonna be thinking, well, why shouldn't I just use this easiest way to get this win? That's the point of the game. But it's not. It's a video game, so the point should be to have fun. And I get that's my perspective, so of course you can hate me for it, but what is the fundamental of a video game used for, right? You can create these cinematic experiences, you can create these enjoying competitive times, these competitive scenes, you can create an area where it might not be able to create in another form of media, like a movie or something. So you can create different, I guess you can create different experiences when it comes to video games. But I always feel like the core of a video game, whether you're playing it to be competitive, whether you're playing it just for fun, or casually, I will say, should be to have fun doing those things. But when you get to the point where it stops being fun and you're kind of just in a rhythmic machine of just, this is how it has to play because this person said it, because the developer updated it this way, I can't find out another way to play the game for myself in this area at all, that's when I think it starts to become a problem. It's not as much of a problem when it, again, goes into PvE and single player experiences as a whole, because those tends to be very useful and informative things, right? Oh, this is where I can get this shield early, this is where I can get this weapon early, this is how I can do this thing early, this is how I can have the best armor set, right? It's really just a problem when you go into the metas of online ranked plays or competitive games, because people aren't really doing stuff for themselves. But to be fair, a meta really wouldn't exist if a mass majority of people wasn't doing it. I think I made a good point in one of my Naruto videos when I had spoke about similar things, about how people are constantly just spamming and spamming and spamming before they had fixed the game with an update, right? But we have all these people that are complaining about the game. Well, if we have all these people that are complaining about the game, why is it still happening at such a large scale? It's because the people that are complaining about the game, that make these YouTube videos and whatnot, are either A, being disingenuous and they're actually hypocritical and they're doing the same things themselves, so they're just falling into the system that they're complaining about, or B, we are all the minority that are complaining about these systems and these people that are playing the game a certain type of way that are making it unfun, therefore killing off a huge part of that community, only leaving a toxic area of the community. And that tends to be the case. It feels like we are always the minority because you want to believe in somebody else, right? So you want to believe that what somebody else is saying is true. So I'm not going to just assume that it's A and somebody is just being disingenuous, and because they say they dislike the game, they're just going to actually play into the thing that they just said that they dislike. Like that, it makes no sense to do that. I understand that maybe you get frustrated and it comes out. I've done it. I've rage quit plenty of times. I'll tell you, I'm victim to it. I have fell into a machine trap of just, well, this is how you have to play the game. This is easy to just do this. I can just spam this, but it's a much more rewarding and fulfilling thing to figure out how to play with a single character that you enjoy. When you're looking at a game like a fighting game, for example, that has these different characters in it, you start to think, okay, when you picked up this game, was you a child? Was you an adult? And when you was introduced to the game, what was your entire point of playing the game to begin with? Was it just to get into the game to win? Was it just to get into the game to play with the characters that you grew up with, which means that you have some type of emotional or personal connection to that character, but yet you're not playing with them, and you ask yourself why? Because you want to play with another character because it's easier to win? Who gives a shit if it's easier to win with another character? Play the characters that you enjoy. Play the game how you want to play the game, not how somebody on the internet tells you to play the game, not because somebody else said this is the best way to play the game, not because the developers updated the game so it might make your character a lot more nerfed or a lot more buffed. Play the game with the characters you want to play. I have a hard time believing that 95% of the population always likes this one character or this subgroup of characters. It always changes. There's so much research to back that up, whereas as soon as an update comes out, the meta changes and everybody starts using something completely different. I'm like just so tired of it because it feels like it's killing competitive play for fighting games specifically, but it can also do the same thing for shooters. But I've kind of backed away from a lot of competitive shooters. I don't know, but it starts to become frustrating when you just start losing because you're playing against the same characters over and over and over. And you might say, well, why don't you just play other characters that can easily overcome those characters? Well, they're obviously optimized to win the most time all the time anyway. So even if you do try to play a character that is really good to counter them, there's another character in the meta to counter the counter that you had to the initial counter. If it doesn't make any sense, it's because it never really does, but it also makes perfect sense. You just kind of have to be there to understand what I'm saying. I know I could just be taking this out of proportion and you could just be looking at me like I'm just complaining, I'm just talking out of my ass. I really don't care. This might have very minimal editing in it and I don't know, a clickbaity thumbnail or something. Really, when you sit down, for me, I just wanted to sit down and just express myself because that's what I wanted to do with my channel to begin with, and I fell into a machine of like the meta of YouTube, right? I gotta put out reactions, I gotta do this thing, I gotta do this thing, but I just feel like metas are killing creativity, it's killing the single mind, it's killing the enjoyment of so many things. In perspective, what I'm speaking about is video games, and I just think that metas shouldn't be the majority of what is being done because it kind of just takes out so much of the game. It just gets really annoying. So I don't know, maybe I'm just the minority here and I'm the only one that feels like that, and if I am, then dislike the video. I really don't care. It hurt the channel more than it already does. Thank you if you enjoyed the video. Slide and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Probably gonna be playing Naruto again sometime soon. I'm excited for Stellar Blade. Yeah, and I'll see y'all again soon. Peace. I never felt